Yes,
Hi, Angela.
we did our training together, so we've done all the clean language modules together, and I wondered where you've got to since we finished our training. We're both very different in terms of our backgrounds and what brought us to Clean.
It's been quite interesting, really. My background is I'm a chartered accountant, finance director, I've been managing director of various businesses. I work very much within businesses and with people. I wasn't quite sure when I was doing Clean, but it's actually transformed the way I work, really. Although I try and apply my professional skills and financial skills, really the way I do that is quite important. I've come to realise that every time I meet someone, it's a conversation. And to do that, I need to adopt those clean listening techniques. And it's the whole thing, it's much about 70% listening and then 30% asking those questions. And I've learned over time, rather than me just going in and applying what I think is the appropriate solution or advice for a client, I can't do that because quite often, if it's a financial or a strategic or commercial solution, it kind of misses the point. Or I haven't understood quite where people are coming from. So what I've got from Clean now is really listen to where people are, what they want, but also their understanding of financial and commercial issues in terms of metaphor and the words they use. So by using their words, their metaphors, and working with her in their own world, I can then adapt my financial and commercial solutions to what they want to achieve. And that makes it much, much easier for me to understand what they want, but also to work through them. Example, recently I was with someone and they have a number of issues, and I actually said to the MD, how can I best help you? And he said, well, I want a roadmap. Now for me, a roadmap is a strategic plan. It's a number of critical areas that need to be addressed in the business, which I was all ready for. But that wouldn't have worked because that would have just kind of bounced off him. But by working with him and his roadmap, we found out an awful lot about where he was. And as part of that, I actually asked him for a number of metaphors for them and the team. And I was a bit worried about it because it's not a typical kind of question. But they kind of went straight into that. And I found some metaphors that were incredibly insightful about where the company was and the problems they face. And by developing their metaphors, they created their own resources and solutions. And what came out were the solutions that I thought were appropriate for the company. But rather than me going in and acting as an advisor and telling them they needed to do this, they found it themselves. I was then able to put around that the strategic financial skills, techniques, technology as it were, to get them where they needed to be. And they've run with that. So it's immensely powerful. And I find out now I don't go in and try and understand a company until I've really listened to where they are. I've also been talking to some managing directors about finances and quite dry stuff. I was actually talking to them about using key performance indicators. Potentially quite a mundane, boring task. What I did was I actually broke that down into metaphors for each key performance and indicators. And we had a hugely dynamic and rich conversation about what they were and what they were for the businesses. And at the end of that, one managing director of a business turned around and said, I've had a major problem with our business. I've not known what to do about it. But actually working through my own metaphors for what they were, I now know, and I'm going to go back and change my entire team and business. I thought, wow. All I did was ask those clean questions, work within it. I gave her the commercial and financial framework so she had a strategy. But we would never have got that if I'd just gone straight in.
No, I think one of the things that when you're talking and thinking is that when we did our training together, we discussed how the worlds that we live in, and for me there's some resonance with what you're saying in terms of the world that I live in, which is obviously the world of medicine and occupational medicine, particularly the interplay between health and work.
Okay.
And in that world of looking at health issues at work, one of the things that comes up particularly for medical doctors can be a tendency to actually feel that we need to have a solution and to actually give people answers to problems, which
Okay.
can be which can be quite a temptation, is to actually give people an answer to a problem, rather than starting with where they are and really what's actually best for them. And I think that listening to your experience of going in with clean questions and actually working with people's own information and their own metaphors, that's something that I've found incredibly powerful in a similar way, working with organisations and working with people who are looking to resolve problems at work. So essentially, my experience is people who mention to me that they're looking for a stress management program, for example. That's one that I've had recently. And the beauty of Clean for me in that is that it allows me to actually ask people to give me a description of what that actually is to them, to actually understand from a metaphoric point of view what that really is. And what that means is that what I'm actually working to then do with them is to develop something that's actually going to meet their needs. And what I think is so powerful about Clean is that often people aren't aware themselves exactly what they mean until you actually start the process of exploring that. And the information that you're getting is so much more rich than just starting with the initial response that you might get. And I think the other thing that I've found, particularly working with individuals, is that what we're often doing is moving people, is trying to understand where people are in terms of their sense of confusion and doubt and uncertainty, which is something that I often come across, particularly in people who are at work and are going through changes or difficulties. They often aren't aware of how to move forward. And the absolute beauty of Clean Language is that it allows a framework of moving to outcomes and giving people a sense of moving forward and making their own decisions and choices in a very elegant way so that they actually decide where they're going next. And I think that that's the real beauty of this particular tool, I think, is that it does allow that respect, that elegance of actually working with someone where they are and not imposing. For me, from the point of view of medical training, there can be almost a temptation to want to fix an issue for somebody. And is really what is so much more beneficial and has far lasting results is actually to work with somebody where they are. And I believe Clean Language allows you to do that. So I think it's interesting that we have, that in the corporate world you actually you've applied and had those results. And
what difference has Clean made to being a doctor and managing patients like that?
Well, I think it is that Clean questions give a direct route to unconscious information in a way that I have never seen in any other way in any other form of question or any other training I've had, either medically or through any other communication tool. So the information that you get back is absolutely information that often comes from the unconscious mind, and the person in front of you may not actually be aware of it until they actually give you the answer. And that can bring light bulb moments that have moved people, in my experience, through something that may have been causing difficulties for them for many, many months and years, in fact. So I think that's the first thing, is that it is such an elegant tool at doing that, at getting to the real issues that may actually be unconscious. I think the second thing is that it is what I was mentioning about moving from problems to solutions, that actually simple, clean questions can actually change the frame of the discussion from discussing the problem to actually trying to move to where someone wants to get to. And in my work and in my experience with people who and people who are trying to understand what to do next when they're in difficulty, which is of course where I'm working a lot of my time, that simple question that actually moves people forward and allows them to move forward, not me to walk beside them while they move forward, can be very, very powerful. And I think the third thing is that because we're working in metaphor,